Okay, hello everyone, and welcome again on ArchiDiaries with our live interview series, which is titled as Technology in Architecture, Innovations and Explorations. I'm really glad to share that we are going to conduct our seventh and last interview of this series with a well-known architect from Delhi, architect Monish Siripurapu from Ant Studio. Monish, it's good to see you on ArchiDiaries.
Thank you so much, Has. I think I've been following some of the talks, and it's really a pleasure and an honor to be here and share some ideas and listen to the comments the audience might have. So really excited for this.
We are also really excited, Monish, to see your presentations and to interact with you. We also have Ashna with us to help us with YouTube questions and streaming. So without much ado, let me straight away go to the introduction, and please allow me to introduce Monish. Monish Siripurapu is a practicing architect from New Delhi. He graduated with a PG Diploma from the Institute for Advanced Architecture of Catalonia in 2015 and founded the firm Ant Studio in 2010. The studio believes that architecture is a balance of nature, sustainability, and emerging technologies. A large segment of their work involves experimentation with terracotta as a building material and re-adapting traditional construction techniques. So the today's presentation is also that Monish is going to give us is focused around the terracotta, and the title that he has chosen for today's talk is Terra-Morphic Explorations. The description goes something like this. This talk focuses on the exploration and re-adaptation of terracotta from a vernacular or a traditional material to an alternate material for construction, and will take on journey of a passive cooling construction techniques and prevalent capillary actions and porous properties of the material that have paved the way to exploring its bioreceptivity and future possibilities. Monish, this sounds for a really interesting and exciting presentation, and can we please have your presentation? Over to you.
Thank you, Has, for the great introduction. And 1 second, I'm sharing my screen. Is it visible?
Yes.
Yeah, hi. So the topic of today, what I'll be talking on is Terra-Morphic. By which I mean is that, we have been experimenting with terracotta in different ways. One is geometrical exploration, wherein we are trying to see how we can actually bring a very simple material like terracotta using parametric forms and softwares and tools, and how we can adapt it in our projects. And the other one is also based on the performance of the material itself, how we can actually use it for both heat reduction and also for cooling. So how the material inherently helps in actually making it possible. So we are a studio based out of Delhi, and we are a group of architects, engineers, designers. I mean, we have artists, people from all diverse backgrounds working together in making this possible. So I would like to, before actually talking about terracotta, I would like to go through a few of the projects that I have worked in the past, just to give an idea of the kind of work that we do. But I won't be talking much about these projects at all. This is just a glimpse into the work of the studio. So there's a project in the hills, wherein we try to merge the project, the building with the landscape, the surrounding landscape, so that it feels like one with the the terrain. And yeah. This is somewhere in Nainital, and it faces the Himalayas beautifully. And the idea is how we can actually merge it with the terraces that are already there. And there's a project proposal in Kerala. It's in the middle of a forest, so we wanted the building to be the structure to be inspired by the trees, and the building as if it is floating in the forest. And some of the projects like this, wherein we wanted to combine the form that is actually modern and also bring nature into it. with so this was a proposal for a commercial project in Raipur, which did not materialize. But but nevertheless, I think one of the projects we really thoroughly enjoyed working on. So the first set of works that I will be talking today is our explorations with brick. I mean, that's something that we really enjoy doing. I mean, as a like I mean in practice when we started off with like parametric design and all of that. So one thing that we always wanted to do is how can we like play with a simple, I mean, the module of brick and use like tools like Grasshopper, Rhino, and all of it actually to create these patterns and forms. And how do we actually make it possible in the real construction? So these are some of the older explorations wherein we tried actually breaking the stereotypical way of looking at like the boundary walls and stuff. Wanted to use doubly curved walls with exposed brick, and like I said, playing with simple tools in the software like interactive points and how the brick can actually play, to getting the doubly curved, which is otherwise very difficult to get when you're actually using just manual tools. So for a boundary wall, and here you can see that as the brick the pattern towards the center is like way more playful, and as it goes towards the edges, it becomes like almost flat. The angle and everything changes. So every angle in this brick, the wall is like totally different, and also every layer is different from each other. So these are some of the images. And again, like we try to play with this brick in wherever it's possible, because first it's super, like I said, it's modular, and when you actually put together, there are millions of possibilities that are there. And also it creates a beautiful warmth in spaces that is really nice to experience. So like we have taken to the this is a project in Raipur it's an entrance for a housing project in Raipur, wherein we wanted to break the stereotypical notion of having this huge guardhouse, the entrances to the gateways and having these metal structures on top. He said, okay, why not actually try with something that is more open, wherein the wall goes like we are playing with the scale of the wall. So this is 6 meters in height. And it like again like playing with the this thing. So these are some of the images from the construction, wherein so the wall actually gives that scale when somebody is entering into the project. Now this is how it looks after the completion. You can see that the guy standing over there compared to the whole scale of the wall and the space that is created. So and like also like experimenting with wanting to take this. I mean, we always do a lot of these exposed brick walls and buildings. But then here we're also trying to see if we can get this kind of a play in the elevation and facade, and then where you can actually like integrate it with vertical greens, because they provide a lot of surface area for the greens to grow. So why not actually even try those things? So this is the latest project that we have proposed for our residents in Gurgaon, wherein we wanted to like integrate. So there is this project wherein one side of it is open and the other side there's a housing project, so we cannot have a lot of windows, even though there are a couple of windows here which are not visible in the in this render. We can see it in the next one. So we wanted to make the whole even facade like to be a bit more playful and also sculptural, like an installation. And then the form can look actually really simple and minimal for a G+2 building, and then have the material do the talk. And the idea was also that like how can we bring like artistic elements into the building, the skins and the facades with like just simple materials but complex tools. So this is another angle wherein you can see that the way the angle opens forms like a nice edging to the windows and stuff. So like the way the brick bond and everything is done with the curvature and everything, it blends like beautifully, creating this like a very organic and like a texture that can also help in like bringing these beautiful shadows that can like highlight the building, so that the building elevations all don't look like they don't look flat, and these really help in what do you say elevating the form and how it is visible and so on. So some of the previous project exploration where it's for a factory, we had to design something in a setback. It's actually just 10 feet wide, the setback. So they wanted to create a small cafeteria which is semi-open, and wanted to do something with so that this actually becomes like a place for having a cup of tea and so on. So we said, okay, because it's a setback and there is only one wall that is left that for us to do something. So we decided why not actually play with it and bring the light from the this skylight sort of a thing on the top that beautifully lights up the wall on the right hand side. And so this is how it looks, the completion. So this, I mean, again, being a factory, we wanted to be really warm and completely, like, low on maintenance. Even if you go here, it was done like 5-6 years ago. The experience remains the same because this material needs like very little maintenance, and like it's easy. What do you say? For a very stressful environment like a factory, this adds a lot of warmth and character in the space. Now, some of the latest projects which are under construction right now in it, this is a project wherein we are also like trying to blend this material like brick with other forms so that it's not completely an exposed brick building. Wherein the idea is that you like somehow blend it in a manner that, like I showed you in the previous pages also, that this becomes a very integral part and like more of a not just a completely exposed brick building wherein the whole building starts to bleed brick, but have it in a very like curated manner so that we are actually able to play with the textures and what kind of the jalis and different. So that allows us to actually even play with the patterns and ultimately what is actually coming out of the project, its textures and all. So this is underway. We started with the cladding in this. The structure is almost complete. So this project is again like 90% of it is complete, and then we are like just in the finishing stages right now. It's a project in Gurgaon, and again here like it's a kind of a modern building, and we wanted the textures to be very parametric. So if you look at it, the textures from bottom to top, the render is not that clear, but then the wall starts to the bricks slowly from being a flat wall, it starts to come out, like creating a texture on the top and all, like, and even on the right hand side, these textures, this is like a wave. I think this is way more visible on site than actually looking at these images on the renders. So even here, this is for the same project, the rear elevations, wherein you can see that there's a window and then the brick wall is actually coming as if they are trying to hug the window that's in the vertical element that is there. So like apart from brick, I mean terracotta as a material, it is nothing but fired baked clay. So one of the beautiful properties of this terracotta is that first, I mean, if you use it in the right manner, it can also cut off the heat that's coming in, but then there's this porosity that is there that also helps us in like creating this capillary action when it comes to if you want to use it for like other performative purposes. So we started like our like love affair with this terracotta, or the brick is not limited to just, I mean, the material is not restricted to brick. So we thought we'll explore even other materials and other forms of terracotta. So the installation that I'm going to show you right now are some of the terracotta and other things that we have taken and how we have like turned it into, manifested into some kind of art forms or elements in buildings. So these are tile. So we have taken these recycled tiles from a project in the same project. I mean, this Anahat, that project that's happening in Noida right now. So the roof that was brought down, we utilized the same tiles as part of the and turned it into an installation. So instead of actually throwing these tiles and actually into the landfill or something, we thought why not actually repurpose them and make an within the living room like an art feature or a wall out of it. So like I said, I mean the form was completely visualized and developed through the Rhino and Grasso tools. And if you notice that when you look at the structure, the most challenging part is having this kind of an eye and the cave sort of a thing in the middle. And these modules, because they're all like I mean the same with maybe a tolerance of 3 to 4 millimeters. So the challenge for us was to actually how do you create this so that they're interlocking and the structure is stable and so on and so forth. So now moving forward, like actually we have done some other installations, and when wanting to use also this material, show it as a very contemporary thing, not just as something that is just sustainable and like earthy. We thought, okay, why not actually push this material in a manner that it looks both eco-friendly, but also like when it comes to the form, it actually represents something that is very state of the art. I mean, the form could still look like very contemporary with the kind of the designs that we do and the forms that we develop. So this was a pavilion, I mean, inspired by Pangolin for a workshop that we have done at SPA. This thing. So the idea behind that is that what if the installation can both be a functional thing, like a shading for people to sit and enjoy, but also talks about like a creature that something like pangolin, which are one of the most endangered species. So if we can actually both create an awareness through our installation and at the same time also like talk about a social issue through art. So that is some of the exploration. Most of the stuff that you saw so far are very much to do with form and geometry using tools. I mean, like I said, tools and how do we, it's more of an expression rather. And the works I'll be showing you from now on is more about how do can we readapt some of the traditional techniques that are there and using terracotta for a more functional purpose, like more of this thing. So our exploration started with like an earthen pot. I mean, actually look at an earthen pot, terracotta. I mean, again, it is for like thousands of years we have been using it for drinking water, and so our idea started by what if this terracotta that is used for drinking water can actually be used for cooling air, like I mean for cooling water, not drinking water. So that's how we started with, and then we realized that okay, if we were able to do that, like there is something I mean we can actually like redefine and the way that the jalis are looked at in the today situation. Because as you guys know that most of the in the built environment, I mean buildings industry contributes to 40% of the emissions globally, and in which building industry contributes to 40% of the energy consumption, and like for especially for cooling. So I think this is something that everybody is aware of. The harmful impacts of air conditioners and the emissions and so on and so forth, like the impact it has on the heat island effects in the cities. And so like we started looking at what if there is a like a way that we can probably try and redefine passive cooling techniques, not entirely passive, like getting inspiration from passive techniques, so that we can enhance the cooling through natural ventilation in our buildings. Like how we can actually enhance that aspect so that we probably our dependency on the active cooling, like more energy intensive cooling can reduce. So while the idea is not to replace air conditioners in the industry, but the idea is how can we like probably like reduce the dependency on them rather. So like if you look at it, I mean India is one of the countries that is actually pushing like for this serious cause, which is like they also come up with a cooling action plan wherein they are pushing for passive cooling or hybrid cooling solutions, so that like I said, I mean our energy consumption in the industry can reduce. So what is the solution? That's the most important like the thought or the idea that we were like chasing. So I think I'll skip these numbers because these are I think pretty obvious that every year there's a tremendous rise in the number of air conditioners that are used in India, especially in India. It's a huge market, and then every year 15% increase in the number of air conditioners that are used in buildings. So our we started looking at traditional systems that were existing for thousands of years again before, and how can we readapt them? For example, if you look at all the jalis or the musketeers and in Iran, or even the modern buildings, like how they use water for evaporative cooling. In there are thousands of examples like this, where beautiful examples where people are like utilizing these passive techniques that have worked in the past, and in a traditional manner. So our objective is how can we bring that and combine with research and technology so that even we can make it better. So our idea is to go for a very simple, I mean, this is what we call as a beehive, because the shape of it is inspired by a beehive. This is just stacking a series of pots and pouring water on top. And as the water, like the air passes through this and comes out, it is naturally cooled. So like I said, I mean, the form of it is inspired by how the bees, I mean, the stack the cells in a hive. And the same way the form is done using terracotta pots. And it's a very simple technique. I mean, it's like the air passes through it when the pots are wet, and naturally when it comes out, it's cooler. So these are the pots. So, but this exploration first started by creating this prior to this like a brick installation. We have done it so that because when we started off, it was just an idea. So we wanted to validate this. So this was the first prototype that we did 5-6 years ago, where we made this brick lattice structure in front of the DG set, and then we let the air pass through through this installation and saw that there is substantial drop in temperature. So we went back to the drawing board. We wanted to combine it with again, instead of just being assuming the facts, why not actually take some help from technical expert do analysis, so that we can actually see if there is a like some kind of like logic to this to the technique that is there, and so that we can actually predict the size, the diameters, and the length of the pots and so on. So this was some of the measures after the prototype in front of the DG set what we did. And yeah, this is how it looks after the water and all. So we started then more and more explorations, trying to get craftsmen, like make it more fun and this thing, the building facades and so on. Like we are trying to adapt it in different places and in different ways so that it can be both modernized and it can actually fit into even a very like contemporary urban setting without much hassle. So yeah, we saw another project in Sundarnagar, and then for a school we had tried to implement it in a window. This is an experiment again, and so on. So one thing that we I mean, are there any questions? Should I pause? Is it going too fast? You are on mute.
Now, am I audible?
Yes, yes, yes.
No, I think you can take your time.
Okay. No, I'm just asking because should I pause and like to get some questions, or should I continue?
No, I think you can take your time, finish the presentation.
Okay. So this is the last segment of the presentation. Bioreceptivity. I mean, this is more of an observation or an thing that we came across when we working with the material. So most of the questions that people ask when we do this installation, what happens when there is some kind of moss that grows on it, and there is this thing. So what do you do? Because terracotta and water, when they come together, moss is a byproduct. That's like the most beautiful thing. So some people like it, some people do not like it, and there are like mixed like feelings about it. So in the earlier stages of this thing, our installation thing. So I mean, we still suggest the same thing to people, that people who do not like this, they can just put a few drops of chlorine in water every fortnight, and then there won't be any moss growing at all in the on these installations. But then if you say that if you like moss, the possibility is that you can actually combine it into something even more beautiful. By combining this terracotta and amplifying the growth of moss, you can also even turn it into a vertical garden with that's with zero plastic. And there's some of the prototypes that we have done earlier just to show how that is possible and how we can actually combine into this, like some the plants inside this. And since the water is not naturally falling on it, it can facilitate growth on the in the product. So another installation wherein we thought not only using it, that triggered an idea for us. What if we can, and moss can actually sequester carbon dioxide 5 times its weight. So we thought, why not actually even create these public installations that are there that can help both in cooling and also like purifying the air around to an extent. So these are some of the research projects that we are doing still, wherein we are pushing for this idea that what if it can solve both the cooling aspect and also with the combination of moss and terracotta together, it can also enhance the air quality, and the most importantly, like they can actually become like public art installations in the city, the places and stuff, and they can also be both beautiful and functional. So this is how it works. It sucks the air readily into the system, and then it has this what do you say, and it releases the air, and the air when it enters wide aperture to narrow aperture. So there's a pressure difference that it creates that also helps in cooling. And so like in the center there is a system like an air washer that can further do this. So this is how we are planning to do this the cooling systems in the for public spaces. So this is a proposal that we are currently pushing for, again a development of the previous installation, a much larger thing wherein this can actually become again terracotta made modular and so on, so that they can actually become like towers in the city, like bio towers. It's a conceptual proposal wherein we are saying that these things can actually be both what do you say artistic and also try to reduce the pollutant particles in the environment and around. But yeah, so that's how it looks. So that's more or less the kind of exploration that we are doing right now in our studio. So I mean, the whole idea is that as a practice, what we really enjoy doing is that how can we combine the technology aspect in things and further help aid us in research, not just for form explorations, but also something that can probably solve a social problem or an issue or something with our own capacity that we can do. And I really look forward to taking any questions that you guys might have. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Monish. Can you please unshare your screen so we can back? Yeah, yeah, really, really nice explorations, Monish. And now we've been having in this series a lot of discussions as to when we talk about parametric approach to architecture and design. More and at this stage, it is a kind of an exclusive, let's say, a niche kind of um an entity which very few people are aware of it, and even the kind of explorations are such that they are very exclusive. So what was interesting here is that you are trying to come up with a product, okay, taking certain craft which is already present in the context, bringing the newer methods of fabrication, and trying to make it reach out to as many people as possible. So there are fantastic possibilities one can see down the line as to how it can become one of the maybe mainstream uh, as a kind of a product, and people start using it for the passive cooling purposes, and in return, I think a lot of load from the air conditioning can be taken away. So let me ask you one question that comes straight away from my mind is that when we talk about the evaporative cooling, and this is mainly evaporative cooling is what we are talking about. Of course, there is also the Venturi effect, which is happening because of the shape of that individual cone, and the air is made to pass through a very small diaphragm, and then when it releases again, it loses certain temperature. Now, but essentially it is, let's say, evaporative cooling. So when we go for this kind of an evaporative cooling, yeah, bulk of in the context of India, is hot and dry. So it's not so much of an issue when you have the moisture that is, coming in. What about the places where I don't need let's say a lot of moisture? What about, let's say, in the context which are hot and humid, or let's say in some of the places where I don't want the moisture? Can this product be also looked at in a way that I can get the benefit of the evaporative cooling but not get the moisture along with it?
So theoretically asking, it is possible, and that's something that we're also working on right now. So is that it's not rocket science. I mean, it's pretty simple. So just imagine that all we need to do is control the water. So if there are sensors that can regulate, that can take the humidity levels in the environment, and then regulate the pump and the water flow that is there, that is pushing the water down the system, you can like easily control the humidity. So if the humidity is like 80% or something, you might not even need actually water in it. Just need the air to pass through. Because one of the most amazing things about terracotta is also, by inherently as a material, it is hydrophilic in nature, which means that it absorbs humidity from the environment, and naturally it retains the the pots remain like cool during monsoons. You must have noticed it. And so the idea is that in that cases you don't even, I mean, if you're able to combine it with method-based technologies, and how you integrate the water and the way you do the water, like control the amount, the flow rate, you can control this thing, and that is something that we're already working on. And so it's like I said, sooner I think we'll have that kit also ready, so that we can actually, along with this installation, we can also provide that kit that can help in regulate the water flow.
Yeah, that would be really fantastic because it will really widen the range of application than
Yes,
what
yes,
we do
totally. I totally agree with you.
with
Yes.
that thing. This terracotta is a very fascinating material.
Mm-hmm.
It is perhaps one of the oldest construction material present. I mean, in each civilization, starting from the Greeks and Egyptian and Romans, and everyone has used it, in the buildings, of course, the earthenwares, etc. You know, so, and now there is a renewed interest with the sustainability issues that are coming day by day at the forefront. What is it that is, in this material which makes it timeless, which makes it universal, and in each time and age keeps coming back with, that I'm relevant, I'm not going anywhere?
I think it's the like. I think the question is also. I mean, you answered it already. Like it's also both like philosophically saying Earth like the whole, I mean, what we really believe is that everything starts and ends in Earth. Like that's the way we see it. Like the life and death and everything actually ultimately goes back to Earth. So the beauty of this material is that if you look at like the universe, I mean the way the minerals that we extract, the metals and the this thing to agriculture, to the that we do this thing, and everything we turn back to Earth, this thing as a material, right? So if you talk about the techniques and even like let's say rammed earth or like some other construction techniques, well, they are like another manifestation of the whole thing, which obviously we did not talk about here because that's not something that we are doing it quite rigorously right now. But I'm saying there's also other possibilities like this when you talk about Terracotta and Earth per se, Terra. So like what really is, I mean, we can only talk for ourselves. Like for us, what we really find fascinating in this exploration in the journey is it keeps surprising you every day. So they are learning like so much. I mean, so this has been a key material for like last ever since we started actually. Even though the practice was initiated in 2010 as a freelance studio, like doing some little work, but it only became mainstream in 2015. So for the last 6 years, we have been exploring this material every now and then every time we get like surprised with both good things and also certain challenges that are there. It's not always it's a joy, right? I mean, because we are also learning in the process of this. And for example, these tools like what we are talking currently, I mean, the point of this conversation, technology and parametric tools that are there, it's making it more exciting. The possibilities have increased. Earlier, it seems like when you are in college, when you look at it in McKay, you look like 4 to 5 brick bonds that are there, or 6 of them, and then you see like, okay, now this is how you have to build a wall. Now, in today's state, we realize that with the kind of these things that are there, we are able to even understand the structural stability, the strength, and how can we do it. And certainly, like more avenues are open. So we are not talking about this thing. And also, brick means that what we are taught, like in college, maybe 4.5 inches by 2.5 inches by 9 inches. It was a module we all studied. But when you get out into the real practice, you realize that there are all kinds of things. And like every city has like maybe 4 by 4 by 8, or like maybe now they are like bigger modules and so on. So like if you have the right imagination and say that and write this thing, and also like write language, they're very important. And you realize that okay, now fine. I mean, this is definitely the material that we have, but we can also like take up the challenge and say that okay, something really relevant to the thing without any plaster or cement and stuff like that, and we can make it absolutely trendy with like even with a simple, like I mean that's the whole challenge. I mean, they make it. I think we are living in an era where no more like clients have also started to realize that luxury doesn't mean just like Italian marble or cladding or like stuff like stone cladding on the elevation. We can also do it with simple materials like this, but add innovation to it and bring craft and like do it tastefully. So that's where I think the most of the challenge and the exploration lies. So I think that's the reason why more people with the tools are started to realize the beauty of this, and we actually seeing a lot of young architects and practitioners actually doing some amazing work with brick.
True. And a lot of everyday new and new products are coming in the market. I mean, from the facade point of view, from the cladding point of view, and so like coming to the craft, I think that you mentioned. One aspect about your practice is, of course, the digital tools and the parametrics, so the softwares and the fabrication part. But then there is also a element of craft and the craftsmania. How are they part of these explorations?
So, like most of the cases, I mean, so when we're actually going for, especially with the terracotta pots and all of that, so we are working with craftsmen and potters, and also like the other techniques, like because when you talk about terracotta, it's not just potters. I mean, if you look at craft, there are also like people who are working with mold and trying to bring the shapes and all of that, like any this thing. So we are trying to work with like as the project demands, like different many of these people. And very interestingly, we also learned that some of these people being in uh, like places like Gurja, because of their tremendous experience, like vast experience in the industry, they also can control porosity of the material, not just the. So sometimes we say that okay, we don't want it to be like if we're getting into that kind of a detail, which we do in our work, in our research, saying that hey, we don't want this material to be this time like the regular porosity. We want it to be 0, or we want it to be 15% or 20%. Now there is this wealth of experience and wisdom that is already there, the industry, that people are able to do that, like based on that. So we don't have to always look to the to the studios and like researchers and IITs and universities. I'm not saying they cannot. Obviously they have, but then there is also wealth of experience that is lying right there, which you can like tap onto.
Yeah. So basically, what you are saying is that the crafts and the craftsmen are very much part of your practice, and then which this brings me to your practice. Can you tell us a little bit more about your practice? How is, because as a firm you are doing a lot of things which are not conventionally an architects or interior designers do. You are also doing installations. You are doing facades. So, what is the model of the practice here?
So actually, that's a very thanks for asking this question because so when we started off in the first place, this thing, the studio, the idea, the reason why it actually triggered this because I was actually living in Delhi and then I don't come from Delhi. I studied in here, but I don't belong to this place. Is that but that the trigger that is caused is that why should architecture practices be just with architects? Why can't they also be bring in like designers and you can actually bring in probably like engineers, I mean researchers. And so we had like people like from I was fortunate to work with like electrical engineers, mechanical, chemical engineers we still have in the team, and artists, and even lawyers who are creative who wanted to actually work with writing and like stuff like that. We wanted to do something for there. And so in industrial designers and stuff like at any point of time, so we have always this mix of people coming from diverse thing into the thing. So we said, if you're interested, let's do something together. So probably we're doing an art installation that involves some kind of kinetic sculpture or something, and we want to have someone in the team. So we said, okay, let's bring in. So we all learn from each other and do something really exciting. Because it's not architecture, but generally our studios are becoming more and more collaborative. And the faster we realize that generally, I'm talking about for everyone, I think the better it is because like gone are the days wherein we can say that, okay, it's a one-man show or a one-man team sort of thing. Like, we are all like now living in a very collaborative era and like Internet of Things, and we are able to exchange information much more than like earlier. So I think that's where we personally enjoy working and this. So the model is like pretty simple, like what you're asking, like bring in as many different kind of creatives as possible and like learn from each other and grow.
This is, very fascinating because this is n number of time in this series we have come across this, that, the more we move towards the parametric or the newer approaches, the boundaries within the disciplines are actually dissolving.
Yes.
So if I want to understand, let's say if I want to take a morphic or biomimicry, and I want to understand what is going on in the nature, it might not be a bad idea to go and talk to someone who has been researching on that front. And maybe from there, something very interesting can come up. Or maybe if I'm like trying to work out with the kind of a cooler that you have, maybe it might be very interesting to go and talk to a chemical engineer or, or even a mechanical engineer. So the more and more you collaborate, the more the better the outcomes are actually becoming. And this is something that is a great realization from this series. I think almost everyone who is dealing with the parametric front, they have this issue has been come up. So your studio is named Ant Studio, and you on your website you describe each of you as ants. So is it some kind of a fascination? What is it that you take from the ants?
See, actually, there is a logic at many different levels when it comes to ants. So, like, definitely, I mean, as our species, even like you look at Leonardo da Vinci, like we all like look into nature for solutions. I mean, that's the best thing to like look. So, if you observe ants, like they are, I think one of the like most amazing natural architects, right? I mean, the kind of ant hills that the ants create are like beautiful. They're even talk about the thermal comfort. It's amazing. They're actually like huge castles and lying underground and stuff, right? It's a beauty in itself. So and they're also like very like they stand for teamwork and like hard work and stuff like that. So there is also like this thing about ants that is especially to look up to is that there's always this thing about and at a very scientific level, there's also like what we call as swarm intelligence. The way that ants move and everything, how they actually can communicate,
Yes.
even when they find the food or like when they have to go, and the kind of discipline they have in moving forward. It's beautiful at different levels when you actually talk about it. They're very intelligent species. That is this thing.
True.
So like ants, I mean that's one of the reasons why like if you look at even a logo, because like I said, I mean I have done my the postgraduate diploma in robotic fabrication. It's a combination of an ant with the two of its arms being like a robotic arm. The idea is that if you can combine this hard work and everything together with technology, and you are carrying like but in a sensible manner, so the future can be this thing. That's the meaning behind the logo and how how we think per se. And when you also expand the thing, and it's like I said, it's this intersection of art, nature, and technology that we're working together in the built habitat in the industry. So how do we like combine these things to make a very space that is both artistic and also adapting the most emerging technologies, but keeping nature as a center element. That's what we should all care for and keep it as most like sacrosanct in our spaces. So yeah, I think that's how ant evolved over time.
Yeah, it's nice to know that. And can we take a few more questions, or
Yes, yes, sure.
it's
I think
all So we talked about the juncture of the nature, art, and architecture. And particularly from the field of architecture and design, there are various approaches when we talk about that juncture. So some talk about direct inspiration in the form of biomorphic. So people try to take certain forms from the nature. Some are more system-based approaches. So like you try to understand. So talk about the ants. So they have a fantastic passive cooling techniques in the ant hill. So I try to understand that and incorporate in the building. There is biophilic approach, all kinds of ways which are there. What are your kinds of processes? How do you go about when you take certain things from the nature and you try to bring it into the architecture and design?
so. Like we always look at it from two perspectives. I mean, see, so when I actually started off, like especially like even as a student in architecture school, so my entire thing was more about form exploration. Like how do you make something that is very innovative and that is not something that like we generally find. So that's how like probably I was when I started off. But then as a so one thing that I like started to realize or like learn and grow in the practice is that beyond this form exploration and stuff, there are many other parameters that are there that we like can like easily adapt, understand from nature, and also make it more into performance and purpose, not just from like the beauty and the aesthetic. So how can you start doing that? So from nature, so I think as an like because if you're reading a like a same novel, like probably every time you read, you read something more, probably which you don't probably grasp in the first time. So that's also with nature. When you first probably see it, like when you look at a flower, probably you'll only understand geometry and how probably the shape and the configuration. But you go into the probably more detail, microscopic level, and you start reading it, how the entire the capillary action and how the food and probably like even observing it over time, the how things grow can teach us a lot of things. So that's how I think for us, as a practice, that's also something that we are learning and growing over time. Is that yes, definitely form and the things like really fascinate us, but we're also trying to look beyond into the details and see how things work in nature. So, but it's a process or it's a journey, and yeah. So, but there is no particular logic or a routine to it. It's just that it's uh, it's the way it is. That's it.
Yeah. So maybe at times it is the form. So like in that pangolin, that you were trying to take inspiration from the skin of that thing, and then you're trying to bring it into an installation. So now there is a form, and there are certain aspects of the form or the way the skin, you're trying to make a shingles out of it in terracotta. And then at times it is more systems related, at times they are more performance related. So
Yeah.
it depends on the kind of the demand of the project, and that is how the processes come. And this is also something in a way, this interview is kind of bringing everything that we have talked about in this series together, because the form is just one of the things that you can take from the nature. When you go beyond that form, and when you start understanding the inherent patterns, the functioning that happens, the growth that happens in the nature, there is much more to observe, and much more patterns are underlying actually, which can be of much more importance as an architect, as designers. So that is something really fantastic. I was thinking, yeah, the kind of practice that you are in, it demands a lot of prototyping, and maybe at times hands-on experimentation. So is the workshop an integral part of your practice? How is it like, or you are collaborating with as and when needed?
So we are, like I said, I mean, even though fortunately the kind of patrons, the clients that we're getting are like really some people that believe in the kind of work we do. But overall, we are a small practice, and we have a very small workshop or a terrace where we actually do the prototyping and all. It's not a this thing, and where we have the luckily so far we have been able to manage all the prototyping, hands-on thing, and everything within the space that we already have. But when it comes to larger projects in the installation that are there, we always try to like work on sites and work with the client. I mean, wherever the position of the location it is, or there are certain factories that we have already for fabrication that we are collaborating with, and who can actually help us do the main of the product. So, but answering your question, I think it has to be an integral process. There is no other way. So when you make stuff like this, you have to make prototypes, you have to make and see the things how they work, and try a lot of variations about how things are working, tolerances and stuff like that. I mean, when you talk about precision and like in an automation industry, architecture doesn't work like that. So you have to work with tolerances. You need to like leave scope for error
Yeah.
and like so on and so forth. So that involves a lot of to and fro process and situations.
Particularly with material like terracotta and brick, it's at times it can be there could be a range of variations,
Yes, we learned it
versus
the
when
hard way around.
yeah, versus when you compare it with, let's say, uh, something like digital fabrication, which can be precise, which is the probably the other extreme of that thing, where the margins, we are working talking about precision in terms of millimeters, whereas over here you are talking about precision in terms of maybe centimeters or inches. It's difficult to bring these two together, and the way you are bringing them in a facade where you have something going with the terracotta, and on the other hand you have something really straight lines coming from the steel or other how do you or is it that you always keep a distance between the two of them to make sure that they don't collide, or there are those kind of, how do you resolve those?
It's a like I said. I mean, experience teaches you a lot of things. So earlier, we definitely you're right. Like you very precisely pointed out, like that it is a non-homogeneous. Like the strength also varies, and the
Yeah.
even the shrinkage based on the temperature, the material shrinks. Even the pots that I'm talking about. So there's always this the difficulty with finding the precision with this. And like you said, I mean, since we're working with computational design and all of it, we're always thinking about precision. So like we started to understand how the material behaves, and so that you can leave the tolerances and consider those as also part of the design in it. So it's very difficult to explain because like we can only talk about case to case this thing. But I can explain you probably one of the projects that you just mentioned, pangolin. It is while it is just more about like in installation talking about the pangolin issue and the wanting to what do you say create an awareness, but the logic in the fabrication and the whole thing was also to do it with just three components. So the whole pangolin, if you look at it, even if it's a parametric sculpture, the whole form is like completely different, the angles and everything. So what the challenge that we set ourselves is that what if we can actually do it just with three components, which is one is that structure with these ribs that are there. That we have fixed the radii of that, so that it's easy to bend and get this. Just that you have to chop them at different lengths. So that is one of the parameters. And the terracotta tiles that are there, they're all like the same. And then the locking system in between, they're all like again the same. But when you assemble these things together, what I personally call it as mass customizing the mass produced, which means that you're mass producing these things. But then when you are assembling together, they are all like the the configuration in which you're putting things together creates a beautiful form. So there is also a logic behind the form and how you are going about resolving it. Because it's easy to say in a computer and say that, hey, listen, I made something so cool. I have like thousands of these units everywhere. Everything is different. Go to the site and say, realize, how can you make all the thousand different? How can you get it? I'm not saying it's not possible, but then, like in India, we do not have that kind of luxury, time, and the tools to make that these things, because these are the realistic challenges that you face at site. Unless there is a super cool client who wants to make things okay, I don't mind. You have 10,000 units and probably in the West, or when you have all the machines and stuff, because you do not actually also get access to machines everywhere in all the sites. Some projects have and some projects don't have, and lots of constraints that are there. So like that's where the technology comes into optimization and helping us. Okay, you have a beautiful form, you have a cool material, like really this challenging material. Then can we combine these things together so that you are also allowing this tolerance as part of the design? Like I said, pangolin, we had to consider a lot of tolerances and we had to consider a lot of these factors into making it something that looks like really simple and cool and done. But there was a lot of thought in how you put these different components together.
So there is an element that allows you to play with those tolerances in that sense. So when I talk about masonry, maybe it's the mortar that allows you to adjust those tolerances. In a dry construction like the pangolin, maybe it was more or less dry. So maybe the detail is worked out in such a
Yes.
way that it allows for those tolerances, and you have to keep that in mind. And this is also because when you're going with the craft and the craft, so that. What can be controlled and what should not be controlled rather is the real game here. uh, One more question, like in this series we've had a lot of people talk about artificial intelligence. So Sridhar was also talking about it. We had this in the last discussion also with Manish, and this issue. How do you think, are you trying to explore AI in your practice, or what are your views on that?
Not yet. I mean, probably I'm not in a capacity to talk about it, because while I really like do follow it or something, I do not have the enough expertise or this thing to comment on the subject. But I do believe that uh, data can actually play a major role in designing, like picking the data and how do you can actually use it. For example, like especially in the kind of work that we are doing, we are like trying to collect data about, especially for example, like to create smart spaces, like temperature differences. How can you, what is the performance that is there, and keep collecting the data so that you can improvise on your like the stuff and the designs that you're doing again and again, like so on, that every time that you do next there is an improvement. Because like if you look at the air conditioning industry, like I said, it has evolved over 100 years, right? And now, if you're talking about technology in the traditional systems, probably we are like while passive systems and everything existed for like thousands of years, this particular journey is still like really, I can say, at a nascent stage. So luckily, a lot of universities and experts are working on this, and then there is more to this thing. So like it's not always about these tools and AI and stuff. Like in our own, I mean, I can say that like the relevance is very important. Like what kind of a technology or tools that we're taking is relevance to the kind of work we are taking, right? So probably for us, what is very relevant is that data points, and how you utilize it in your the design, so that, like I said, and probably machine learning to an extent, so that how can you make these things. That I think that that's something that I see probably much more relevance and use at the current moment. And like I said, AI, I don't know. So I really like have no idea.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic, and like with all this Internet of Things and more things getting connected with the cloud, and the concepts like big data and things like that coming in, sooner or later they are going to enter into the field of architecture and design. I don't know what is the future. I don't have an idea, but I think different people have their different views and opinion. But almost everyone seems to agree that okay, there is a potential over there, and maybe a few years down the line, that potential will become much more explicit as to what can be done when we talk about AI and IoT in the field of architecture and design. But it was good to hear you out. One last question, if I may. There's a lot of interest amongst the students and the young generations with respect to parametric and digital fabrication, you know, architecture and design students also. What would be your message to all those students who are, trying to explore these new tools and who are just started off on the journey?
I think it is very important that people should learn the tools. It's like it's very important that we whether you see not everybody wants to be like a Zahadi or Rimpulas or Frank Gehry or something. There are also people who are like who really like performative buildings, and that's also technology, and that's also parametric. Like when you talk about building performance, that's not just like a geometry or something. There is a lot of science and tools and everything involved. Even that's also parametric, like you understand and everything like that. So when you talk about technology, there are different kinds of branches that are there. So probably the thing that really seduces people is this fancy forms and everything. Like for students who want to learn parametric methods, something really funky and cool. I think which is definitely not the only thing. It is definitely an eye-catchy thing, but but like when you say about, like I said, in my opinion, parametric these tools and everything, there is a much vast depth into it, and like people can do way more than this thing. You can also talk about like instead of artificial intelligence, you can talk about augmented reality and stuff like that. I mean, there is also like creating digital spaces and experiences so that people don't even have to have. I think that there's a great future even in that, like augmented reality, so that probably you are experiencing something that does not exist, and so probably that's even more sustainable because you're not building but still getting the experience in general, right? And stuff. So that, like those things are there, and it is very important for students, and if they want to in a competitive world to do, but that's not the end of it. I mean, if some people are like very traditional and straightforward, and there is also like they can still do it, but for those who are definitely interested, I think there's a whole different world out there waiting, and it's huge. It's definitely it's like and there is place for everyone. Like this thing, it's not just about application or like I said, cool looking forms. Yeah.
Yeah, it's wonderful. It's. I think this summary. I think this can be a wonderful summary to not only your talk but also to this entire series. And as I said, a lot of common things that, and I would like to conclude here, just with few observations that I think I have managed to observe by listening to a lot of architects. And one thing which you said, and almost everyone has said, that form based explorations is just one very small aspect of parametric design or parametric architecture. And as a student, you might, when you get carried away by, a lot of things that you see in the internet, but go beyond that thing. There are a lot of processes, and there's a whole world out there when we talk about parametric design. And this is one of the things that has again come about in your talk. The second thing, the point which has very repetitively come across is that collaborative way of working and hands-on way of working, collaborating with craftsmen, collaborating with other fields, experts from the other fields, is perhaps the way to go about, if you want to explore these newer technologies and you want to do something different. So there is no other way out there other than collaboration. I mean, as an architect, if you want to run a practice, it can be a very good conventional practice. But if you want to step into this realm, be prepared to, collaborate with as many, be prepared to listen to the craftsmen, to the people from the other field. And there is no other way possible than that. And another thing which is, yes, the craft, the importance of craft has always come about in your work also. We could see that there's terracotta artist involved. In Jwalan's case also, almost everyone has talked about that. Look, when I talk about parametric approaches in the context of India, it's not that we have everything available here. I may not have perfect 3D printers available to me, the robotics available to me. Maybe I have the CNC, and the subtractive tools are pretty much there. But that doesn't mean that, that's the end of the world. There is a whole world of craftsmen and the knowledge which is there, which can be, brought together with the digital fabrication, and then you can really do wonderful things. How you can take something that is existing, tweak it, bring it, and then there are possibilities are immense. So, and the fourth thing, I think we also, the importance of the AI And the way we move ahead, the data driven processes are going to come. And even like in your own practice, you would like to go back and analyze the things that you have done, what is working, what is not working, and over a period of time you are building that database. And these are the kind of processes. So sooner or later there is some way in which the data driven processes are going to come about, and that it sounds for a very interesting possibilities as architects or designers. I'm really thankful to you, Monish, that you gave us your valuable time, fantastic presentations. It was really nice talking to you.
Thank you so much, Ayaz, and it was really pleasure, sharing my thoughts with the audience. And yeah, I look forward to staying in touch with you guys even in the future. And thanks for hosting.
Definitely, I think we would love to interact with you again in future with some new things and new projects, and that would be wonderful. And we will keep in touch with you. And I would like to conclude here the series also. It has been wonderful experience. Thanks to all the people who participated on across the platforms on Facebook, YouTube. Thanks for joining with us. I'm also thankful to the wonderful team here who have made this thing possible. And on behalf of my team here at ArchiDiaries, I'm really thankful to all the people. And so this series is, we are concluding with this interview. And what we will continue is the reflections. Reflections is more a sustained activity that we do almost every second and fourth Saturdays of the month. So next Saturday, we are going to talk to architect Riaz Tayyibji from Ahmedabad, and he's going to talk about his model of practice where the research and practice, how the two are combined. And that is going to sound for a really interesting talk. So if you do like what we are doing, please don't forget to like and subscribe on YouTube and Facebook. So thank you so much for joining with us, and hope to see you next Saturday. Have a good day.